The storm that dropped her on my roof lasted 3 days, and I want to be honest about the first thing I felt when I found her. Not wonder, not tenderness, just the tired arithmetic of a man who fixes machines for a living. One more thing broken, one more thing that would cost me time I didn't have. I run the salvage post at Windfall Reach, out past the last surveyed fence line, where the grain silos went quiet 2 generations back, and nobody bothered building anything new over the bones of the old mill. I patch harvesters. I rebuild pump housings. I keep 3 families' worth of equipment breathing through winters that don't care whether it breathes or not. That's the whole of what I do, and I was proud of the smallness of it, the honesty of it. A man who fixes what's broken doesn't have to explain himself to anyone. She'd fallen through the gap where the old grain chute used to be, wedged into the loft above my workbench, wings still half membrane, still soft, the kind of soft that makes you nervous to touch. Storm-orphaned, I figured, blown off a ridge nest somewhere past the tree line, too small to fly the distance back. She had a burn-black stripe down one foreleg, where lightning or the fall itself had caught her, and she wouldn't eat from my hand for 2 days, just watched me with the flat, assessing stare of something deciding whether I was a threat or furniture. I named her Cinder, for the stripe, and I told myself it was temporary. I told myself a lot of things were temporary that winter. She started following me between the workbench and the stove after the 4th day, walking with the stiff, indignant gait of something that hadn't yet learned its own legs belonged to it. She stole bolts. She hoarded them under a horse blanket in the corner like they were eggs, and God help you if you tried to take one back. She'd hiss with a sound like a kettle just starting to think about boiling. No real heat in it. More insult than threat. I laughed the first time. I hadn't laughed much that year. I told myself she'd fly off eventually, back to whatever ridge she came from, and I'd go back to being a man who fixed things and didn't get attached. I did not examine too closely why I kept a second bowl by the stove, or why I'd started leaving the loft window cracked even in the cold. The riders came on the 9th day, 4 of them, and I knew before they'd finished circling down onto the yard that they weren't traders. Their harness gear was too clean, too formal, the kind of ceremonial plating you wear when you want a place to remember you were serious. The one who dismounted first had ridges the color of old iron, and eyes that did the same flat assessment Cinder had done to me on day 1, except she'd had the excuse of being 3 weeks old. "Engineer," she said, "I am Judge Warden Rethka Vell, of the Cindervane Assize. We are conducting an inquest into the disappearance of a clutch hatchling, storm-scattered from the Aldrin Ridge 9 days past. You will account for your activities." I'd fixed enough machines to know when something was already decided before you opened the housing. This had that shape. An inquest, not a rescue party, a tribunal. Come to determine whether the engineer at Windfall Reach was the kind of man who took a lost hatchling for the black trade that ran eggs and scale through the outer settlements. I'd heard of that trade. I understood, standing in my own yard with 4 judges watching me the way you watch a suspect, why they'd assumed the worst of a man who lived alone at the edge of nowhere. "I found her in my loft," I said. "Storm-blown. I've been feeding her." "You will show us," Rethka said, and it wasn't a request. I walked them to the barn with my chest tight, in a way it hadn't been since my discharge papers came through, because I understood, somewhere under the indignation, that there was no way to prove a kindness. You can show a man a repaired engine, and the evidence is the running of it. You cannot open your chest and show someone that you meant well. All you can do is walk them to the loft and let the truth stand there, plain, and hope it's read correctly. Cinder was under the horse blanket with her bolt hoard when we came in, and she came out furious, the way she always did when disturbed mid-nap, hissing that kettle hiss, stomping across the loft boards with her wings half-mantled like she was 50 times her actual size, and marched straight past 3 armed judges to plant herself against my boot, glaring up at Rethka like the intruder here was self-evidently the tribunal. Nobody moved for a long moment. "She does that," I said, because the silence needed filling and I didn't have anything better. She thinks anyone taller than the stove is a personal insult. One of the younger judges made a sound that might have been a laugh choked down out of professional necessity. Rethka didn't move, didn't blink, studied the two of us, the furious hatchling wedged against a grease-stained boot, and the man standing very still so as not to disturb her, with an expression I couldn't read yet. "Turn," she said to Cinder, not unkindly, and Cinder ignored her entirely, which seemed to answer something. Rethka crouched instead, slow, and reached toward the burn stripe on the foreleg, and Cinder allowed it with the particular grudging patience she reserved for me and, apparently, now for this stranger too, though she kept one baleful eye on Rethka's face the whole time, like she was reserving judgment. "The wound is dressed," Rethka said. "Properly. Salve, not scorched shut." She looked up at me. "Where did you learn a clutch burn dressing?" "I didn't," I said. "I dressed it like I'd dress a coolant burn on my own arm. Didn't know if it was right." She stopped favoring the leg after 4 days, so I figured it was close enough. Rethka stood. Something had shifted in her face, some ledger quietly balancing itself. "Engineer, do you know what we came expecting to find?" "A poacher," I said. "I'd have expected the same, in your place." "We expected a poacher," she agreed. "Or a corpse, small and unclaimed, the kind of ending that happens to storm-scattered hatchlings more often than any of us like to admit aloud. We did not expect," she gestured, and there wasn't a clean word for what she gestured at. A hatchling standing possessive guard over a stranger's boot, glaring at a judge of the assize like the judge had tracked mud in. "We did not expect this." "She's stubborn," I said. "Comes by it honest, apparently, since I'm the same way." That got the laugh out of the younger judge properly this time, and even Rethka's mouth did something that wasn't quite a smile, but was standing very close to the door of one. "The inquest is concluded," she said. "There is no case to answer. I would say instead that Windfall Reach owes a debt it did not know it was accruing." She paused, and for the first time since she'd dismounted, she looked less like a judge and more like someone choosing her next words with care. "The Aldrin Ridge lost 11 eggs this storm season. This is the only clutch child we have found breathing. I did not ride out here to condemn you, engineer. I rode out here because the assize does not know yet how to say thank you to a stranger without first ruling out worse. It is a poor habit. I apologize for it." I didn't have a good answer for that, so I just looked down at Cinder, who had apparently decided the crisis was over and gone back to interrogating my bootlace like it owed her money. They didn't take her. I want to say that plainly, because I spent the drive of that whole conversation braced for it, for the tribunal to conclude its business by folding her back into some clutch registry 3 ridges away, and me left standing in an empty barn with a spare bowl by the stove and no reason for it anymore. But Rethka looked at the two of us a long moment, the furious hatchling and the quiet man who hadn't known what he was building until strangers rode in to question it, and she made a note on nothing, some private ledger of her own, and told me the assize would be back in a season to check on the leg, and left it at that. I still fix harvesters. I still patch pump housings through winters that don't care whether they breathe or not. But there's a second bowl by the stove that isn't temporary anymore, and a bolt hoard under a horse blanket that I've stopped pretending I don't know about. And some nights, when the wind comes down off the ridge the way it did that storm season, Cinder presses in against my side without being asked, and I understand now that I was never really being investigated at all. I was only ever being found.